The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. Live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Wednesday, December 11th, 2019. I'm Kevin Laramee with Duane Rollins as always. And before we start the show today, if you haven't listened to it yet, yesterday on the Two Sawtooth Soccer Podcast, available for the $2 tiers of our patrons, we had a great interview with Colm Vance, goalkeeper for York 9 Football Club. A great interview with Colm, looking at his mentality as a backup goalkeeper, how to get better, how to approach basically life. It's a great motivational interview, and I invite you to have a listen if you haven't already, Duane.
Kevin, the very first sports writing or sports gig that I ever had was covering college, Canadian college football, like gridiron. And I learned very quickly that the best players to get interviews from, to get insight from, weren't the quarterbacks, they weren't the wide receivers, the running backs, it was the offensive linemen. And I think a backup keeper is the same situation within soccer, because these are guys that are usually good-natured, intelligent, funny, and they observe everything around them. So it's even though you might say it's a backup keeper, why are you interviewing a backup keeper? He just signed a re-up his contract, so that was part of it. But it's because they give us a better insight sometimes, because they have a unique perspective, and I recommend listening to it.
Absolutely, very proud of that interview. Today on the show, we'll look at the Club World Cup a little bit later on. We'll touch a bit on Champions League. We'll look at news coming out of Mexico concerning a Canadian men's national team player. We'll look at some copyrights, and we'll go to Italy to talk about Ancelotti and Napoli parting ways after a 4-0 victory in the Champions League. That was quite interesting. But let's start the show with the biggest news in North America this morning. Alan Pulido, Golden Boot of Liga MX last year, best player for Chivas Guadalajara, has been transferred to Sporting Kansas City for a $9.5 million transfer. Biggest transfer in Sporting Kansas City history. We were expecting Pulido with the Quakes a few weeks ago, but Alan Pulido going to eat some barbecue in Kansas City.
Apparently, although hopefully for SKC fans, not too much barbecue, because that might affect the fitness a little bit. Not exactly a training type food. From my understanding, there's probably more calories in the sauce than you're supposed to have in a week. But nonetheless, it's interesting on a lot of different levels. From an MLS perspective, it's another Mexican star that is coming up. This is a trend. When you include that to rumors that we've been talking about the last few days, which aren't necessarily Mexican nationals, but players coming from Liga MX coming to MLS, you're looking at what's starting to look like a trend. And that suggests to me, maybe from another interesting perspective, that the teams might be understanding or believing that there's going to be a loosening of the spending rules to allow them to compete for the first time. And that, in turn, is more attractive to these players, because let's face facts, as much as the U.S. can be pretty messed up at times, our country as well, it's not it's safer. It's more secure. There's less pressure from a soccer perspective for these players. So if you could match their salaries in Liga MX up here, and you start to close the gap a little bit so it's not seen as a career killer for them, then obviously this is going to be a very attractive destination for them. Major League Soccer is. We've always said that, Major League Soccer likes to big up itself a little bit too much for my liking sometimes, but the reality is this market of North America is ripe to really expand. There is no other league in the world that has a greater ability to move its ceiling than MLS does. And I think we all understand that, but we've sort of been frustrated by the lack of response. So maybe within the boardrooms, Kevin, there is a suggestion that there's going to be more spending there. And I think we all hope that. And finally, as a last interesting perspective before I let you jump in, it's very interesting from SKC and the earthquake situation, in the sense that SKC has been that traditional team that has been very good, with the exception of last year, and has always lacked one big thing. They haven't lacked a true number 9 that can score goals for them, that can put them over the top, that can make them a truly championship contending team. They obviously won in 2013, but that was kind of a different era in the league. We've talked at length about how you need to have a game changer in Major League Soccer to be competitive nowadays. And this is a suggestion that Kansas City, one of the last holdouts of the Moneyball philosophy, is now agreeing with us. You can't win without a big DP that can score.
Well, yeah, and Alan Pulido does fit that description and will be a very successful, if everything goes according to plan, very successful player coming into Major League Soccer. And also, one of the first dominoes to fall in I would say almost a triangle love story with many different players. Chivas already replaced Alan Pulido with the best Mexican striker available. He was the striker in Liga MX that is Mexican in the most amount of goals last year. His name is escaping me right now. I don't have it in front of me, so I'll come back later with it, but they already signed him. That's what the first domino that fell after Alan Pulido's transfer to Kansas City. The other domino that we're expecting to fall is, well, Cavallini, Lucas Cavallini, player for Puebla, but now probably on his way to Vancouver. The question was Kansas City or Vancouver. Both teams were linked with the Canadian striker, and it seems to be heading to Vancouver right now. We'll see. Not him, but I mean, logistically speaking, if two teams were interested in him and one already signed, there may be option A and option B was Cavallini. Vancouver might sign their option A, which might be Cavallini.
And Cavallini also was linked to Cruz Azul and to Club America, and was basically thought to have had sights on a move up the table in Mexico, and instead is now going the DP route, it seems, to Vancouver in MLS. And this is another indication there that I think there's a lot going on. I mean, you can look at sort of this, they're kind of sheltered from some of the harsh realities of interior life in Mexico. That you or I might not be, so it's not entirely that, but their families might not be, right? It's not a safe place to live in a lot of ways because of the cartels and all that sort of jazz. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say that. That's a factor in any athlete's decision. But beyond that too, look, there's the control that the teams have in Mexico. I know we hate it here that the MLS holds the rights and all that sort of stuff. Well, Liga MX does too. They essentially decide where these guys go.
Even more to a point that it's almost even. It's different. It's not the same, but I wouldn't qualify it better either. The players are almost either going where they're told or leaving the league, that's where the similarities come to Major League Soccer, the way player roster personnel works.
Yeah, I mean, look at Herculeo Gomez through his feedback, through stuff he said. He's been pretty open about this. He's a guy that's played both in Major League Soccer and Liga MX. And he's talked openly about how it affects players down there in terms of the movement stuff. It's the gentleman's agreement, right? That the big teams get together and make decisions to hold salaries down. And this is the only power that these players have, is to leave the league. And if Major League Soccer could get up and close the gap a little bit quality-wise and match the salaries, then, yeah, this is something that Liga MX is going to have to deal with. Now, there's still going to be a long time, I think, before the overall quality of Major League Soccer is equal with Liga MX. And I know as an MLS podcaster, I should be, beating the drum of MLS is equal, but until I see the evidence, I'm not going to go there. Also, the infrastructure below is nowhere near it in America and Canada now than it is in Mexico in terms to just feed the beast, right? So this isn't going to be an equalizer, but when the stars start to move on, and instead of going to chase dreams in Europe, they're going to Major League Soccer to take cash paychecks, let's be honest, but also to not have their careers in Mexico, their careers with the Mexican national team necessarily end. That's a good thing for the league, and that's going to overall increase the quality of the league. I don't think it's completely closed the gap by any means yet, but from a Major League Soccer perspective, I mean, I don't know what to think of KC. They are going through a bit of a change. I think they recognize they had to change their ways. Last year was really bad. There's no doubt about it, but I kind of compare their last year to TFC's 2018 in the sense that I don't think they're as bad as the record suggests because of their history and the fact that they had a down year tied into the fact they went deep in the CCL. And that is something that MLS is going to have to deal with when you have back-to-back years when teams that go deep in the CCL end up getting so beat up and so injured and so tired from that run that they can't compete in the league. They're going to have to address that in some way moving forward, or they don't have to. I mean, they just have to recognize either one thing or the other. Either you're going to go deep in that competition and then still be able to compete, or you're not going to go deep in that competition. It's really, It's an either or right now. And that's something that the 5 teams are going to have to decide how they want to approach heading into this year. We talked a lot about the impact and CCL over the last couple of days. We're not going to get into it now, but it's something that suggests to anyone who observes Major League Soccer that SKC can bounce back. And this move now puts them, I believe, back in the conversation for the top of the West rather than the battle for the red line in the West.
Yep. And we'll look also, you mentioned runs in the CCL in 2015. The Montreal Impact did have, 3 games postponed? At least 2, I know for sure. And I think even 3 games just postponed and rescheduled to alleviate the schedule. So that does help, and it hasn't.
That
been
should
the case.
happen. I mean,
well, it depends. When there's 5 teams, it's hard to make it happen. In a 27 team league next year, 28.
I mean that's that. Look, if the league is serious about running in that competition, they need to make allowances for the teams that are in it. I mean, Houston refused to cancel a game for TFC's run, right? And basically, TFC had to toss points in the toilet. And that's Houston's right, I guess, within that situation. But if you truly are a hashtag Team MLS, then you're not going to do that. So, that begs the question whether there should be a hashtag MLS. And I kind of understand Houston's perspective here, but the league needs to step in if that's the case.
Like, oh, yeah, we could they're going to play a B squad. Let's not postpone this. Let's play this and get the 3 points. I can see it on a sportsmanship, gamesmanship, or just easiest path to 3-point type of mentality. But this is Pulido to SKC, and the dominoes will continue to fall. We'll see if Cavallini ends up in Vancouver and the other transfer market, because there was probably more than one team with Pulido, and we'll see now if San Jose turns around and gets another prominent Mexican player to help Matias Almeida in year 2. Starting today, Duane, the Club World Cup in Qatar gets underway. It is a complicated tournament in its format, but you know what? Well, let's try to make sense of it today. Let's try to understand how this tournament works.
Well, it's not that complicated. I mean, no bracket is. If you take 2 seconds to step back and look at it, basically they recognize that there are 2 regions of the world that are much better than the rest, and they want to limit the amount of games and disruption they have in their seasons for these 2 teams, that being this particular league year, Flamengo and Liverpool. So they are given buys to the semifinal, and then there's a way to work into it. So simply put, Kevin, the first game, we'll call it A, is between the host and the Oceania champion. This is a recognition that these are the weakest 2 teams in the tournament. One of them advances to play a quarterfinal, and that quarterfinal will go against the CONCACAF champion. The other games are the other one is just a straight quarterfinal, and that is the Asian champion and the African champion. So this is a reflection of strength, right? So they recognize that Asia, Africa, and CONCACAF are above Oceania and the host. The host and the Oceania play a qualifier game, to think of it that way, to qualify for a quarterfinal, and then you have 2 quarterfinals to play, 2 semifinals to play a final. It's not that hard. It's hard to explain with words. It's not hard to understand if you open up the Wikipedia page and look at the bracket.
Exactly. Let's just look at the teams involved this year in the tournament. You mentioned the host. Yes, it's in Qatar, so it will serve as some sort of a practice for Qatar to host a tournament heading into the 2022 World Cup. The host country is represented by 2 teams, but one given a ticket to this competition as a host country team. Al Sadd represents the host nation, a team, of course, from the Qatar Stars League. Also, Africa. Espérance Sportive de Tunis. There was some controversy in the second leg of that game. It took a few months took 3 months actually for the federation to give the credit for this victory and give the ticket to the Club World Cup to Espérance Sportive de Tunis from Tunisia in Africa. Asia is the team from Saudi Arabia, so 2 teams from the Middle East represented in this tournament, the host country Qatar, and this team from Saudi Arabia, with a certain Sebastian Giovinco playing for Al Hilal FC, which won 3-0 their game against Japan's Huara Red Diamonds in the final of the AFC, which is the Asian Football continent, Champions League. Anyways, representing Asia in Qatar. The last two teams, Europe, of course, Liverpool winning the UEFA Champions League last year, and Monterrey winning the CONCACAF Champions League in 2019. All these teams are in the Club World Cup starting today in Qatar.
Yeah, today is the Qatari team. Al Saad, S-A-A-D-D. Looks like Sad to my Anglo.
I remember the car Saab. I used to like the Saabs, but maybe it's Saad.
Yeah. Saad, yeah. Anyway, they're playing how do you say it? Yangon?
Yengen. I think it's Yengen, yeah. From a team from New Caledonia. The first team ever from New Caledonia to qualify to this tournament representing Oceania. So, yeah, the Yengen sport is a good story.
It's the first team from outside of New Zealand and Australia to qualify out of Oceania to win this. And they're almost made up of entirely I think they are made up of entirely New Caledonia athletes. So that is something to watch today. Also, the Qatari team, a certain Xavi is their manager. So you've got something to watch if you want.
And let's not forget the winner of the Copa Libertadores, Flamengo from Brazil, which is a team with a big following, a team from Rio. And Flamengo, that's where Ronaldinho started his career at a pro level, among other places, and among other great players also, Flamengo and Liverpool, like you mentioned earlier. Already in the semifinal, only need to win 2 games to win this tournament. But yeah, so the game today, like Duane mentioned, is Al Saad Sports Club versus Yengen Sport at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time and 8:30 p.m. local.
Yeah, and look, I find these games interesting on a certain level. And here's the funny thing: I don't make fun of the Club World Cup. I kind of point to the fact that no one pays attention to these damn games when they happen, when everyone's trying to tell me that the greatest thing that a Major League Soccer team can do is qualify for this tournament that they never watch. There's kind of a disconnect there. But
the romantic idea is important, right? It's the romantic idea of, we're going to the world stage to face a team that I watch on TV called Real Madrid or Barcelona or Liverpool. You know, that's the beauty of it. I guess it's to see the winner or a team in CONCACAF, a team in Major League Soccer, playing against Jurgen Klopp and Mo Salah. I guess that's the romantic idea that gives this tournament importance. But in reality, it's like the CONCACAF Champions League. When your team is not in it, do you actually watch it?
Well, yeah, I do, but
well, I was not talking to you. I was talking to everybody else.
The general fan, yeah. No, you should never talk to me. Do you actually watch it? The answer is probably yes.
Someone asked me once a few years ago, Dwight, like, "Oh yeah, did you?" Like, yes.
Yeah.
whatever you.
In some level, I watched it or paid attention to it.
The answer is yes.
Okay. I like the competition for the romantic level because it's always interesting to me, not necessarily on a different level. Like, I mean, Liverpool and Flamengo are above these two teams. There have been upsets in the past few years. There hasn't been an upset of the European team yet, outside of the South American team beating them sometimes. But the European team has not been upset by one of the other confederations yet. There has been an upset by the other confederations towards the South American team a couple times. So there have been a couple finals that have been Europe versus somewhere else in the world. And I think that there is something important and worthwhile about having a competition that any club in the world, even Forge FC, could qualify for. And
they would have to go on a heck of a run, but it is possible on paper. It's the beauty of the cup, the beauty of an open tournament, right? As example, a team like Forge FC from all the way from the CONCACAF League, they win this. They go to CONCACAF Champions League, they win this. Guess what? They could face Real Madrid.
Yeah, Blainville could in theory, qualify for this if they won the Canadian Championship.
A heck of a run, speaking, but yes, it is theoretically possible.
Yeah, win the Canadian Championship, then won the CCL, then they would go to this. So yes, it's open to the whole world, and that is romantic. There's no doubt. I also, as a football geek, am interested on watching New Caledonia play a Qatari team to see what happens, because I don't know much about either, to be honest, and it'll be fun to watch. I from a Toronto perspective, we have Sebastian Giovinco, as you mentioned, in this tournament. So I think that combined with Liverpool is why TSN has decided to pick up and exercise their rights this time. And you can watch all of the games on TSN this year, which is a new development. In the past, you sort of had to search.
And you know what? That only is a draw to me. Because I can I could just open my TV and put the soccer on. I'm kind of missing watching soccer on regular means. It's been a few weeks because, there's no Premier League, no Champions League on TV. And there's a lot of DAZN rights and One Soccer rights and not on TV rights. So, and even NBC now has been playing with me in Canada and pulling the 12:30 Saturday game away from me. So I'm looking forward to putting on TSN at 12:30 today and doing research.
There you go. You can justify a couple hours away from that. And it's a busy day, of course, with the Champions League happening as well. But look, it's fun and it's interesting if you like this sport, but let's be face facts. The other thing people, when they talk about we can play Real Madrid. Well, you could, but you're going to probably have to beat the African champion first, and CONCACAF traditionally hasn't. So that's the other thing I think a lot of people here don't necessarily think of.
Well, there's a chance this year, though, I think, because Espérance de Tunis is actually playing in the quarters.
Or the other quarter,
the other quarter, Al Hilal. And I wouldn't Al Hilal versus Monterrey. Example, that could be. I think Monterrey is maybe the third best team in this tournament when you think about it.
Maybe there's timing problems for the Mexican teams with this tournament because it comes at their end of their season, between their seasons. So that they've always, I think, struggled a little bit. There's not a great tradition of them in it. They haven't really won many games. They typically lose as often as they beat the Asian teams, and the African teams have traditionally been a little bit better than them if you look at the history of it. So I do find that sort of battle, and I would almost be interested in expanding that kind of concept to see what the non-big confederations could do in a larger tournament, which I guess leads us to another question. Is this tournament, of course, is looking to expand in a couple of years. They want to get back, FIFA does, to a true World Cup concept with the clubs.
With a group stage and a knockout stage, correct?
Yeah, they want to expand it to 24 teams. This is getting pushback from the big UEFA teams. They don't want to add more to their calendar. And I see both sides of it, to be honest with you. From a purely fascination level, I would be interested to see an expansion of this so that European teams were tested more often against particularly the South American teams, but also, to give a chance for the rest of the world to play. If you expand this to 24 teams, then maybe a Major League Soccer team does get in there and you do get an opportunity to really test and see where you truly stand up. It will end a lot of those barstool arguments. But, they're not robots. And this is a conversation we have all the time. And I think that the European teams they agreed to this format because they tried to do this earlier, and basically they pushed back. Famously, Manchester United was forced to pull out of the FA Cup. That caused all kinds of problems in England, and rightfully so. The FA Cup already sort of gets devalued to the point of kind of absurdity sometimes, and I think that they were quite right to push back and say that we should never have to make a decision like that again, to go to the original one of that. So this was the compromise format, and I actually, it is confusing to someone to understand if they don't look at the bracket. It's not that confusing, really, when you look at it closely. And I think it is a format that works. And I think it's a mistake to try and expand it, to be blunt. Unless you were to go with a once every 4 year format, even then you're still, basically you'd be playing once every 4 years and you play in the summer, but then you're 3 out of 4 years, you'd be playing a summer tournament for the big team players, and that is just going to shorten their careers. It really just is. So it's something to consider there. But look, in the meantime, we have this format in front of us, and it's something to watch. The other quick thought of this before I move on is that this is a test event for Qatar, which says if this stays in this format, I wonder, and I've suggested this before, now that the Confederation Cup is gone, this will be taking place here in 2025. So
yeah, that's true.
That would be something. And I think that if you're going to have a test event in North America, I've always advocated that it should be in Canada. So of the three nations, they should battle for this and say, okay, well, let's take this one as ours because we have to test ourselves more than you two do because you two have both hosted World Cups. Canada has not.
Yes,
that would be my
but
argument.
let's not kid ourselves. If there's
It'd be in Mexico City.
no,
but
no, Dwayne, not that. If there's going to be a more teams, and if there's going to be a test event in North America, there's going to be an MLS team or many MLS teams involved, and there's going to be games in LA. There's going to be games in New York. There's going to be games with those teams involved because it is North America after all, and the shiny coast always shine, especially in big tournaments.
Well, at any rate, something to think about because there is no Confederations Cup anymore. I think most people know that. If you don't, well,
now you do, and it's a good decision. Before we say goodbye for today, let's finish the show with a few news segment. A couple of days ago, we've talked about the possibility of the Montreal Impact signing Stefano Stacchio from Cruz Azul. And over the last few days, it has becoming clear that this was not going to happen. He has been sent on loan to Portugal to Pacos de Ferreira from Cruz Azul. Stefano Stacchio will not be a Montreal Impact player, at least until June for sure.
Yeah, it's probably monetary. On some level, because he is still, they would have to pay a transfer fee, and Montreal probably didn't want to pay that transfer fee. Gives him an opportunity to play some more, to play back in shape. Cruz Azul also has the opportunity to watch him develop a little bit more. He was not brought in by their manager that is currently there, so he goes on loan. Maybe he excels there, then maybe he gets another look. If not, then they have the opportunity to move him on at the end of that loan period. So, honestly, the fit in Montreal was always a little strange to me because they're Piat. Where does he play? So I think this is probably better in some ways because I think he's going into Montreal as a backup, and I'd rather see this guy play because I don't think we know exactly what he is yet.
Napoli decides to move away from Ancelotti after a 4-0 victory for Napoli. Anything else that finishes with an I that I can say that rhymes? Maybe not, but that was surprising.
Yeah, this is league decided, but obviously they finished second in the group, qualify for the knockout stage. They likely, like I said, they're not doing as well in the league as they would like, I guess. Who knows? Italian and people like Serie A is chaos half the time, so more chaos here. This is a manager that does tend to wear out his welcome fairly quickly. If you look at,
it's the Italian version of Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, so we move on. The Champions League matchups yesterday for a group stage game, it was actually quite a compelling day yesterday. So I hope more of the same today. Although as always, I'll be watching a dead rubber because I am who I am. But I'm not.
You're going to be watching Manchester City. But one thing I want to talk about, I was mentioning the letter I in words that finishes in E. The question is, Ancelotti, is he going to Inter Miami?
Maybe. Maybe. Inter Miami seems like a place that is going to try and bring in a name at every position. Although, that said, their DP moves are fascinating to me. They're linked to the Atlanta model. They're not linked to huge names, like huge old names, other than David Silva, which I haven't heard a lot on in recent days, to be honest. That came out earlier this year. But then the changes have gone around now that they seem to be going after some young, Alan kind of players. And that's probably the better way to do it. And if they can successfully identify those players, then great. Now, the caveat to that, of course, is that for every Almiron, there's a Tito Martinez, right? There's not Tito Martinez. There's Christ, can't get his name in my head. The other guy from Atlanta, the bomb last year.
Oh yeah, PT Martinez.
PT, yeah, Tito.
It's easy. It's a pity that he's not working.
It's a pity that it screwed off. Yeah,
that's how we remember.
Well, look, he's a funny one too. Like, remember this? It was about this time last year that we were talking about him all the time as being he was going to rip MLS apart, and the Atlanta United fans were already planning their parades.
Yeah,
and I think. Yeah, it didn't quite work out, which is the point of this, is that even if a player is excelling in another league, you have to always not just in MLS, you have to always factor in that what it's going to mean for them to move. Can they adjust to the language, to culture, to everything that's going on? And it doesn't always work out. So you can't always just go, it's not Football Manager is what I'm saying. And that should be should get a T-shirt that says that. It's not Football Manager, stupid. There you go.
And Atlanta's a city with a funny lifestyle. What I mean is an interesting and great nightlife, which can be distracting for young players.
Atlanta.
Is it the case here? Who knows? From things we've heard, maybe it is. Let's continue and finish the show with a funny conversation. Copyrights are always interesting. They give us an idea of what certain things people are working on. And we know Charlotte is possibly the next team in Major League Soccer, maybe announced even on the 16th of December next week. That's the latest rumored date, apparently. But here's a few copyrights that you found, Duane, regarding Charlotte. Here, let me name this. You can see them on your screen. Charlotte FC, original. Charlotte Crown FC, Charlotte Fortune FC, Charlotte Monarchs FC, Charlotte Athletic FC, Charlotte Town FC, the Carolina Gliders FC, All Carolina FC. There should be another one. There should be one that's All Carolina, and Shaggy is your mascot.
Oh, Carolina.
Lina, oh Carolina. Yeah, thank you. Now he's going to be stuck in all your heads for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, All Carolina. When I first read what's the one? Grinder, the
Gliders.
I thought it was Grinder at first. That's a different thing you're going for there, guys.
Swipe right, swipe left. Come see the Carolina Grinders.
No judgment here. You got a ready-made shirt sponsor there.
Hey.
Could be, your Pride night every night. But anyway, it's moving on. Charlottetown FC, that's interesting too. The CAMPL might put a cease and desist on that in case they ever want to go into Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. But,
or if Charlottetown FC
it's going to be Charlotte FC. Let's not kid ourselves. But,
I like Crown. I kind of don't mind Crown, but take the FC away. Just Charlotte the Crowns. Like the Queen City. Charlotte's the Queen City. First of all, if there's a team in Charlotte, it should be called the Woo. And guess who should be on your jersey?
Exactly.
Ric
Woo! It's bingo card. We referenced Ric Flair.
How can you not? We're talking about Charlotte, North Carolina, the home of Ric Flair.
The Nature Boy Flair.
Mid-Atlantic.
Look, MLS clearly makes a lot of these decisions in a bubble. I remember when Toronto FC was named, it was original to just name a team Toronto FC. It was like, oh, how interesting. You can develop its own nickname and all that. Well, now it's become a cliche. Every damn team in the league is just a name FC, and they put the FC on, which is hilarious because nowhere else in the world do they say FC. It's assumed.
Like the Montreal Canadiens is HC. Do you say HC every single time? Is it the Montreal Canadiens HC are facing the Maple Leafs tonight? No. But it is a hockey club.
HC, yeah.
It is. Technically, if you go into the name of the business and the thing and the copyright, sorry, I dropped my pencil. It is HC. But I think we're trying to get cute. And you mentioned originality in FC. It ain't original anymore. It's been a while since it has been.
No, it's like I say, it was unique back then. It's not unique anymore. And it's kind of becoming a joke nowadays. Like, oh boy, like what was the rebrand of Reno? They rebranded from the Roughnecks to, not Reno, Tulsa. They rebranded from the Roughnecks to,
FC.
It's like Tulsa FC or something like that. And it's like, why would you take this historic name that has ties like 40 years and go, oh, we need to be just generic? Why? Why?
Because
I can't wait for the first. I don't think Major League, because it's so centralized. I can't see it happening. But I cannot wait, if it ever does happen, to another Major League Soccer team to come in and go, screw that, we're going North American Naming Convention. We are the blank blanks. We're the damn Bears. And you know what? The team that does that will be loved for it because they've gone so far the other way. That bring it back on. I want to be the Bears again.
In college football, there's 41 teams called the Bulldogs. You need a, I don't know.
Rough Riders.
Pick a team like the Sacramento Bulldogs coming into Major League Soccer. It's not going to happen. Well, Republic is fine.
Republic.
Yeah, but they have FC at the
Republic, so that's kind of unique in its own way.
Take the FC out. But no, I thought it was a worthwhile conversation when you sent me this morning and the Charlotte names. And what is your favorite name for Charlotte? You've been listening to the show. You like the Crown? You like I hate the Fortune. Like who? Like Charlotte Fortune FC? Yeah, it's a lot of F.
Oh my heavens! At least it's not. What are the like Houston Dynamo? Like what? A lot of Russians there in Houston? Are there?
Well, Dynamo is always like a name that was in our soccer leagues growing up, right? When our soccer association, there was always a Delta, there was always a Dynamo, and there was always a Sporting somewhere. And I guess that's where that's from. Houston Dynamo. It's Quebec Dynamo, by the way, who are no more in the Premier League Soccer du Quebec, and that is unfortunate. But yeah, it's interesting to think about how many times have we said interesting today once again. Man, if people do the drinking game, they're really getting smashed.
Before we go, I just want to ask anyone in Kansas City, this is going back now, however long the rebrand has been, since 2010, so a decade now. I was promised a decade ago by a Sporting Kansas City staffer that the reason they were calling them Sporty wasn't because of Lisbon. It was because they were going to become a true sporting club. So I want my women's lacrosse team attached to Sporting Kansas City. Where is my women's lacrosse team?
So you got what is the name of the Kansas City team in basketball? Do they have one?
No, there's no basketball. Not a professional basketball team. They're
Okay.
They're a college team.
Yeah,
Kansas
okay.
State. Yeah.
No, anyways, if you have one, call them Sporting Kansas City.
Well,
in the
Kansas
NBA.
State's not in Kansas City. But anyway, that would be their basketball team there, though.
Okay, yeah, no, but no, that doesn't exist yet. But it is a funny conversation, a little light-hearted conversation to finish the show today. If you like what we do, make sure you follow us on social media at 24th Minute for Duane, at Kev Laramee for myself. How would you call the Charlotte team in Major League Soccer? Let us know on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN or by email, sportspodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Monday to Friday, Soccer Today is live on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN, and you can find the podcast version everywhere you find your favorite podcast. On that note, we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of The World of Football with a Soccer Perspective. And until then, you can find our premium podcast on our Patreon feed, patreon.com/sportspodcastnetwork. A great interview with York 9 goalkeeper Com Vance yesterday of the Canadian Premier League. A couple of breaking news audio over the last few days on the Patreon feed as well. We hope you enjoyed them. And until tomorrow, as always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.